Hey, everybody, it's Kevin Peterson here on the Chronic Hope podcast. Happy Friday. It's episode 18. We're going to talk to my good friend Tyson Stark about what every family should know about interventions and treatment facilities. Before we get to the amazing Tyson, I just want to remind you that the Chronic Hope podcast is the only podcast designed specifically for families that are struggling with addiction and codependency. Our mission is to get as much resources into the hands of the families. It's to support families that are struggling with addiction and codependency and offer education and support from mental health professionals about families, addiction, and codependency. We have a couple of books that I've written titled Chronic Hope, Parenting the Addicted Child, and Chronic Hope, Families in Addiction. Oh, there they are. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. And we also have a 1-hour video course on the Chronic Hope Families in Addiction book. It's normally $97. It's $37 now. And it's a 1-hour primer. It walks through the entire system of what to do and how to do it. But enough of the sales pitch. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of today and the fun part. Hey, Tyson, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Hey, man, it's great to have you. I think you're the perfect guest. I'm really excited to hear a little bit of your personal story and then a little bit of your professional, and remembering that our podcast is really designed to helping families that are struggling with addiction and codependency. And I think you're the perfect person. So without any further ado, I would like to just start off with the questions and take and see where it goes. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Fire away.
So, why did you get sober? Or are you sober? Let's start with that.
That's a great. That's a good one to start with, right?
Yeah.
I'm about a month and a half away from, hopefully, God willing, we'll make it to 10 years of continuous sobriety. It's a long time for me.
Wow.
Why is a really good question. I can tell you this, that in the beginning in my journey, I did not have a desire or I didn't want to get sober. I had to get sober. And that was the course, that was the path for me. Once I got involved and started to actually get involved in, for me, it was 12-step work. That's when everything started to change. And so it was almost like I had to get pushed into this space, be surrounded by people that knew what was going on and cared enough about me to continue to ask me to do things that I wasn't willing to do. And that got me to the spot of doing that stuff. And once that happened, it's like the gym. It's like, I don't want to go to the gym, but if I go and have a personal trainer or someone showing me what to do and I do it over and over and over again, eventually I start seeing results. Then I get some momentum. Then I get some motivation. That's really how it was for me. Once the fog lifted, it was very clear to me how much I was harming my family, my friends. The denial is thick. I'm going through it right now with a family member where it's like, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. I couldn't see the forest through the trees.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. How old were you when you got sober?
I was 31. 31. Yeah.
Gotcha. Excellent. Good age. It's funny. I got sober at 27, and people are always like, "Wow, you got sober early. You were so young." And I'm like, "I was 27. I was almost dead."
Yeah, exactly. Should have happened for me probably at 18 or 19.
Yeah.
But it happened at 31, and it happened exactly the way it was supposed to. I didn't leave anything on the table, right?
Exactly. What role did your family play in you actually getting sober? And then I'm curious, did you sort of a follow-up? Did you go to just straight to AA or treatment, or how did it happen for you?
Great question. So the most important thing was I was really ready to give up on me. I was past that point of like, just leave me alone. I always visualize it, just let me just walk into the woods. I don't know what that meant, but it just let me go. And, we walk this fine line with families between codependency and enabling. But I could tell you this, for me, that was the only thing that kept me from just going away, whatever, take that as you will. And so my family played this role of basically surrounding me and scooping me up and taking me somewhere, not really giving me a bunch of options. It wasn't like, hey, what do you want to do? It was like, we got to intervene. We got to get involved with you directly, and we're going to take you to treatment. And I remember, so treatment is the answer to that question is how sobriety happened for me. But I remember like I kind of gone through most of the withdrawal process, but we were on our way to the treatment center, and I was asking them to stop so we can get some beer or something. And they were like, "Are you crazy? You're going to rehab?" I'm like, everybody drinks on the way to rehab. And I didn't get to have one. I showed up there sober. I was like, this is not fair. I want to have one last hurrah. But that's where it had taken me. The details of it, I was unemployable. I was 28 years old living in their basement, just a leech. And so, and I'm really, really grateful for them that they had the courage to stand up and intervene. And so it was a treatment setting for me that got me involved in 12-step recovery. And that was my path. That was the source for me.
So, and I loved what you said earlier, because this is my experience too, because I get this a lot with the families that I work with, or when I talk to people or lecture with people, they say interesting things. And one of the things that they're like, well, I've heard people only get sober when they want to get sober. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, here's my experience, and take my experience for what it's worth, in that everyone I know that has long-term sobriety like you and I got sober because the people around them circled the wagons and said, party's over.
Yep.
And you either get sober or you get out. Those are your choices. And it sounds like you had a similar situation.
Very similar, and you hit the nail on the head. I deal with a lot of other people and a lot of families, and there's this fine line. And ultimately, without the guidance of professionals like yourself, it's really tricky to navigate that. Because listen, 10 years ago, fentanyl wasn't a thing, so there was still risk of death and destruction and all those things. But now it's really different. That whole idea of like, let him hit bottom, kick him to the curb, he'll come around. Well, now people die. And it just wasn't my experience. There's several other ways to do this thing, I think. My experience wasn't that. My experience was people loving me until I could love myself. Just that simple. Now, luckily for them, they had some guidance once I got into treatment with the family counseling there that helped them with the enabling and the codependence to prevent repeat behavior, right? Like that's a key, because they wanted to take me out of treatment and go like, buy me things and make sure everything was okay. And I'm like, no. This is when you let them fall a little bit. This is when you let them learn the lesson. It's a great point. It's a really great point.
Hey, Kev, yeah. we have a question from somebody in the audience that I wanted to pull up, which seemed like a great thing for you guys to talk about. Let me make this the right size. Amanda says, Kevin, what is your best advice for a family with members who aren't in agreement about how to handle the active addict? I think that's something great for you two to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Danny. That's perfect timing for that question. Tyson, I'm going to let you answer it first, and then I'll jump in.
I'm going to use a real world example. When I've worked with some family members, and I'm a treatment professional, so to speak. And I know, and I have sense enough today to know that because I'm dealing with a family member, that I already have this lens that's going to prevent me from seeing the truth, even though I have way more knowledge and experience than the rest of my family members. Yeah. So what I do is I bring in other people to help me see the truth, because they're not connected to that. So it's not really about the family agreeing with somebody. It's getting a third party that's like, listen, I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm just going to tell you the truth for what it is. Like a medical doctor. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're sick. They just tell you you're sick, right? Very much like you, like what, Kevin, if I send a family to you, I know that you have this bird's eye view, and because we're philosophically like-minded, that I know the guidance and what that looks like. And the family, it's okay for them to not agree. That's perfectly okay,
And that's the exact answer I'm gonna give. The only thing I would amplify on that, because then what I get is, oh, Kevin, and I know you hear this. Oh, Kevin, you don't understand all the different personalities in our family, and this person's going to do this, and this person's going to do that, and this person's going to try to be the lifeline, and this person's going to be the hero, and this person's going to be the savior. And what I got to tell them is, look, I'm going to give you some recommendations for an interventionist. I want you to call the interventionist and talk to them, because that's their job, is to handle the situation. They walk in with a plan of action, and it's your job to follow the plan, not to try to be the interventionist. And I suspect you probably feel exactly the same way.
Exactly the same way. I think the beauty of it that gets really really convoluted is that the basic pathway is actually, we say it all the time in AA, right? It's not easy, or but it's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems really convoluted when you're in that family dynamic, but it's really actually pretty simple. Now, I always encourage people to use professionals, because that's what we're here for, to help navigate that. Just like you have someone working on your car. The car fix is pretty simple, but I'd rather have someone that's done it a few times than someone that's watching a YouTube video, but it seems so heavy and convoluted, like, I don't know how this is all going to shape up. It's okay. We've guided this path before, and we know how to do it. We know how it ends. We know how it begins, so there's a simplicity to it.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the number of families that I work with that are like, well, we kind of staged our own intervention and it really didn't go very well. And I was like, so what do you mean? Help me understand what happened. Well, we all flew to where he lives and we kind of banged on his door and we all showed up, and I'm like, oh no, yeah, no, that's not going to work. I love the analogy you said of, it's like doing your own auto work. Or I would even take it sort of the next level too. It's like being your own therapist. Bad choice.
Sure.
Super bad choice.
Sure. I have the ability to manipulate each family member in a different way, subconsciously and not maliciously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when the family's coming around, although there's some pressure, I still have a way that I work with each one of them. And that's just part of the disease of addiction. That is not a malicious thing. I'm not trying to be a jerk. That's just part of it. So it's a big deal, right? Where you have a family member that surrounds me and I'm like, it's going to be a little stressful, but I got this.
I agree. And I also want to go back to what you referenced earlier about, today's day being with the fentanyl and the opiates and stuff that can kill you right off the bat, and that's why you got to bring in a professional and knows what the heck they're doing, that can walk in and just completely, figure the situation out and say, okay, here's the plan. Let's go. We're going to follow the plan. And here we go, and walk down the path, because it can be a little daunting and overwhelming. And like you also said earlier, which I think is super critical, is that and we all walk in as family members or friends with a bias, a personal relationship bias. And when you bring in a therapist or a professional or an interventionist or someone like yourself, who works for the treatment center, they don't have that bias. They walk in very clear and concise, seeing things with a target in mind, and this is where we're going to go, and this is how we're going to get there. Yeah, that's exactly right.
We have a Jeremy Plummer that commented and said, "This man helped save my life." So
yeah, you got a fan out there, Tyson.
He is a fan, and let me just tell you something about the miracle of recovery. This isn't a plug, but Jeremy started a place for people that are into physical fitness, a place for them to show up on Friday nights, instead of the bar or wherever for people in recovery. And it's called Recovery Through Repetition. And it expanded from him and a couple of buddies on a Friday night to 3 times a week, and hundreds of people showing up. It's free of charge, just like a meeting. Just show up, put $1 in the basket if you can. And that's it.
Where is
it? It's down in Boca Raton in Florida, at a gym. Yeah. You can Google it or Google Jeremy. It's just a part of this whole thing, man. It's just how it works. Like, we didn't plan that. When I worked with Jeremy, who coincidentally is my nephew and probably one of the coolest guys on the planet, it was never part of the plan. I didn't even tell him I was going to be on here today.
That's awesome. Oh my God, Tyson, you have fans. Your nieces, this is Julie Chamberlain. Your nieces and I are watching. We're so proud of you, Tyson.
Now, look at that.
How does that make you feel?
Overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. Can't tell you, because and the people that are watching this know that there was a different path, a different trajectory. Yeah. You know what I mean? And far from perfect, but the reality is I was going away I was going down this path. It started way early, right? It started in my teens, going away from being a son, a brother, an uncle, all those different kinds of things. And so to be able to sit here and say, and being like, I have a title, an addiction professional, right? Like I have someone that wants to employ me, right? It just brings all that into the moment of like, wow, look at that, Their miracles are possible, and I am as run of the mill as they come. I did not have a special background, a special kind of circumstance or situation. Very much. I know a little bit about your story.
Yep.
Run of the mill, man.
Garden variety drunk.
Exactly. So it's possible for me. It's possible for anybody. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And what's funny is that not last weekend, but the weekend before, I was actually in Boulder, Colorado, with my wife and my sister and brother-in-law to watch my youngest niece graduate from high school. And I mean, to be there was so awesome, and to realize that I'm actually welcome here, and that I'm part of the family, and
you
then
got the invite.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a funny story, right? Because of the whole COVID situation, there were only 4 tickets to the actual graduation, and my sister and my nieces adore my wife, so I knew who was going and who wasn't. So I watched it on live simulcast while my wife went to the actual event.
You didn't quite get the invite.
Well, I mean, it's okay. I don't mind. I knew what was coming. But my sister's like, would you get her some flowers? Would you pick up some flowers? So I went and got some roses for her, and we had a big lunch for her. And she's actually going to go to Clemson University up in South Carolina. And at lunch, I was like, hey, look, I just want you to know. I want you to know you're only 4 hours away. So if you need us, all you have to do is pick up the phone or text and just say now, and I will literally drop everything, clear the schedule, and be on the way, to see you and get you and take care of you. And, that's just like you just said, that's not the guy 31 years ago. The guy 31 years ago was like, whatever, leave me alone,
Right.
So,
right.
So how did you tell us about where you work, and then how did you get into the gig? What was the deal?
Oof. It's a great question. First, let me shout out to Abby and Emma, my nieces. I don't get the names wrong. Emma Grace and Abby Rose, who are watching.
Oh my God.
Honestly,
How old are they?
Emma will be 13 and be a teenager here soon. And Abby is 10. Getting there. I was texting my sister earlier today, like I'm a terrible uncle because I'm like on Amazon shopping for stuff, and COVID prevented some of the visitation, and but they are absolute gems. How I got into the business. The truth be told is that I didn't have anywhere else to go. I worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, and that wasn't a great place for me to be after getting sober and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just not a great environment. And I had some people that told me like, you should consider working in mental health or behavioral health or substance abuse. You'd be really good at it. And I'm like, I've been wanting to leave rehab since the day I got here. I don't want to show back up here. Then something shifted with I had 17 months of sobriety, and I'll never forget it because I had a opportunity to interview for an entry-level position at Cumberland Heights. And I was volunteering a lot there. I gave back a lot. I was very, very involved with the alumni community. And I remember walking down the sidewalk and thinking and having this thought that this might be the last time that this sidewalk is ever the sidewalk to me. Because it was always a place that I went to as an alumni. And I'm walking through there to interview for a job as an employee. And I was all dressed up. I had like a sweater on. I was really nervous and was sweating. And I had some friends that worked there that knew me as an alumni, and they knew who I was. And so it was a formality. So the person that was interviewing me walked in. She's like, I'm really busy today. I don't really have time for this, but I looked at your resume, you're hired. I was like, I was so prepared to give you so many answers to really hard questions. Like, what are you going to do with $1 million? Like all those interview questions, but I was hired on the spot. And I worked my way up and around through Cumberland Heights. And that's how I ended up working in the field. I've experienced a lot of different departments, a lot of different things, and kind of found my niche in what I'm doing now.
And what do you do now?
So now I'm the National Strategic Relations Coordinator. So I'm in basically national front for Cumberland Heights. I deal with a lot of professionals like lawyers and flight attendants and pilots. I also work on the subset of our own events, the stuff that we put on here. We don't have any podcasts, but Kevin, you've been on our community education event, which takes place once a month. All that you can find at Cumberland Heights website. But that's what I do now. I look at those two different parts, and then I deal a lot with our national relationships. Cumberland Heights has been open for over 50 years, and we have a lot of friends throughout the treatment network throughout the country that we work with. And so my job is to help maintain those relationships, along with we're a nonprofit, so I have about 7 million jobs. But those are probably the big 2 or 3. Everyone's got a row sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, check out land ahoy. You gotta do all the different parts.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta carry the water, chop the wood, and peel the potatoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do it. Happy to do it. Love it.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I'm really glad to hear that. So, hey, our title of our episode today, right? What every family should know about interventions and treatment centers. I think we kind of talked a little bit about interventions and that the significance and the why a family should use an intervention or interventionist. But so how, thinking about an intervention or interventionist, what would you think a family should know about how to pick someone?
That's a great question and a loaded question. There's a lot of different types of certifications. The first things first is I would make sure that person is certified and has been trained professionally. That would be the first place I would go. I also would reach out. There's networks within the treatment community. We're not segregated. We all know each other. And I can tell you, for me, I had 2 interventions that I had to send out this week, actually. And what I like to do for me is get an understanding of who the person is, right? So I have a 70-year-old man who's retired, very wealthy. He's going to, I don't say require, but it might work better if he has a different interventionist than the 17-year-old who's running away and got some behavioral issues. So selecting interventionist, it's very much like selecting a doctor or something like that. You want to make sure that someone is qualified. And I think it helps to have another set of eyes on it, like yourself, where you say, give me a little bit about this patient and let me play like matchmaker, because there's some that are absolutely phenomenal. There's a guy I know down here in Florida that is like, if you're in the top 1% of wealth and net worth, that's the guy. If you're 18, probably not the guy, right?
Right. Right.
So that's a big part of it. It's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And understanding who, go ahead.
No, sorry. So getting help from someone like yourself or myself, someone who's, engaged in the industry or does family case management. I don't do intervention. And I know you don't either. But getting help from someone like us and saying, well, so here's my situation. I have a 35-year-old male who's got alcohol and cocaine. And they live in this part of the country and they want to use insurance and and how does that all work out and how does it look? And of course, the guy's cutting my lawn now.
And I'll tell you this, Kevin, that there's a part of it where you're the master. You know what I mean? Like, you've got a lot of different, not only the wealth of knowledge and experience, but all that stuff throughout the years. I just kind of envy you. You pick up on who you share are like-minded, who it's going to be a good fit. And the more time you spend with people, the more you understand like really what their niche is. And that's always my goal. And I know it's yours. There's not I'm in a nonprofit situation. All I want to do is set somebody up with the right person to that's going to get help. And they don't have to come to Cumberland Heights. I really don't even care. It's totally up to them. Whatever's the best fit for the patient, and trusting the interventions that know that are going to say, hands down, this is the best place for this person for this reason. And as long as we all stick together with that, we're in good shape.
Absolutely. I agree entirely. And I think that's, like you said, knowing as many people in the process as possible and being able to match them. And actually, in both my books, I kind of put like a checklist criteria of what to look for, and that
That's
helps.
right.
So let's say, okay, we've already established that we found the right interventionist. And then the interventionist is going to turn around and say, hey, I think it's important for us to, here are the options, or here are the places that I would consider for treatment for your person. So what do you look for? What do families need to know in picking the treatment center process?
That's a great question. The first thing I would look for is transparency. There is, the insurance game, if you will, has allowed for substance use disorder treatment to be very lucrative and profitable. And that I'm not here to say that you shouldn't make money doing that. But anytime you have something that's lucrative, you can tend to get into some gray areas. Cumberland Heights is a member of the NAATP, which is an advocacy group for treatment centers. We've all signed ethics pledges, and you can go on their website and see a list of providers. You can go on Cumberland Heights website, and our CEO, Jay Crossan, has put together a Q&A on what you should ask when looking at a treatment center. While geographic location sometimes is really attractive, I also want to know is, do they have the right credentialed staff to work there? What levels of care are they doing? Because there's a place that may look one way, but it's actually doing something different. I also, because I work for a nonprofit, we're looking at in-network, right? So we prefer to work with in-network providers. That's basically, we've agreed on a contractual rate with your insurance company. These are the services you're going to provide. There's a lot that goes into it. I will tell you this, very similar to most things that I purchase online, I don't always click on the first thing that I see, right? I want to do a little bit of research on it, So there's a lot that goes into it. I could go on this for a really long time, but if you have someone like yourself that's working with the family, you've already done this. You've vetted these centers. You know who's really good at what and the thing is, every person is different. Arch Academy, our adolescent program, is a great example of, there are some times in our milieu, and milieu being the population that's at Arch Academy, where there's a patient that we cannot take. And then a month later, 2 months later, if the milieu changes, we could take that patient. And no one's supposed to just be able to divine that information. It's really up to me and you, and you've had such long experience with these places that families can come to you and say, this is what's going on. And I've worked with you on some cases where you're like, this is what's going on. This is where he needs to go. And we're like, yes, 100%, we agree.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece.
I think another thing that's important to understand too, and you talked about transparency, is that with someone like me that does the case management and someone like an interventionist, that you need to ask the question is that, do I get anything out of referring? And, for me, the answer is absolutely not. No questions asked. I don't get a kickback. There's no commission. There's no incentive. We may have lunch, but that's,
right.
That's about it.
That's extremely important, right? That's, and those, excuse me, those ethical guidelines are put in place to ensure that people like me and you do the right thing because it's the right thing, and we're not swayed in one way or another.
Absolutely.
But my family did the same thing. My family reached out to professionals, and that's how they selected the treatment center for me. They met with a guy. They believed what he had to say. He was in recovery as well, which is important to some people. So they believed that he knew what I was going through, and he said, "This is where I would go," and that's where I went, and here I am. They're not always that simple, but that's pretty much how simple that one was.
But I think it's important to understand the rhythm of what we're talking about is that, like we talked about earlier, your family got to a point where they're like, okay, this isn't working anymore. And so we're going to give him a boundary, but we're also going to give him a solution. We're not going to just kick him out the door and say, good luck. We're going to say, look, we love you. This has to end. And here's the solution. And if you don't want the solution, that's fine, but you're not going to be hanging out over here.
Exactly.
Yeah. And they've done their research. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's critical.
And you just they kept coming back to, this is the solution. This is your option. Your other option is to, go kick rocks. But if you want to, eat and enjoy the air conditioning and those kinds of things, like, this is your option. And man, I squirmed in every way imaginable. It's like, we're going on Monday. I'm like, Tuesday would be better for me. That's where I was at, any day, Wednesday, that's normal, We see it all the time. You and I, we see it every day. When my family was going through that, I'm sure to them that was not normal, right?
Yeah.
You could almost get on the phone with family, like, here's what's going to happen. You're going to request this, and they're going to respond in one of two ways. But in the moment for that family, I'm sure you see this all the time. It's like it's a crisis and everybody's escalated.
Yep.
And so it's all about just someone there to keep everything cool. We've seen this before. It's unique to you, but it's not unique to us.
Absolutely. And it's about, yeah, exactly. And so, I would say actually 3/4 of the job that I do is end up working and managing the family, not so much managing the individual. The individual is doing what they're doing, and we all know what's going on. That's actually the easy part. It's coordinating the team and making sure the team understands that here's the mission, here's where we're going. We've decided on this facility based upon all the requirements, and so now let the interventionist do their job and let them follow through. So
And
yeah.
to make it, let me jump in. I want to just say this, that, Cumberland Heights, Arch Academy, the adult and the adolescent, we pride ourselves in the family component and the family programming of those. It's a key part, I think, to selecting a treatment center. But the dream of the family therapist is having someone like you on the outside working with the families, because your loved one's getting 30, 60, 90 days of intensive treatment, while the family's getting a couple phone calls and maybe a 2 or 3 day intensive. But they don't have the opportunity to do the work and prepare themselves for their loved one that's getting ready to come out. But if they have someone like you working with the family and the case management, bringing everybody together, because you know this as well as I do, the disease of addiction lives in the nooks and the crannies and the dark places and the half-truths. And so when you get with the family and expose all that stuff, that's when the healing starts to happen across the board. Most families don't like to hear it that we're sick too, right?
Yeah.
We've got some stuff that we have to work through. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Like, it's all them. It's their fault. It's their fault. Yeah, it is. It's not about fault, but it's about this. Everybody heals through this,
Right. We got to heal the whole system, not just the individual.
Whole thing. Yeah. That's the recipe for long-term recovery, is healing the whole system.
Exactly. Okay, so last question, and take us home with this. Give us a little bit of a sales pitch about, you just said Cumberland Heights Arch Academy. Tell us about your programs.
We'll start with Cumberland Heights, the flagship. Like I said, it's over 50 years old. It is gender specific, men and women. We're in network with probably close to 50 different private insurance companies. And Cumberland Heights has a wide variety of services, starting with detoxification through residential level of care. You can do 30 days out there at Cumberland Heights, and then you can step down into an extended care program. We've also have intensive outpatients located throughout the state. So the idea is you come to us for treatment. We're going to get you detox stabilized, some stuff started, and then step down into IOP so we can continue your treatment. Arch Academy is the adolescent recovery of Cumberland Heights. If you don't know this, people in recovery love acronyms. We love them a lot, and that's what ARCH stands for. Adolescent Recovery of Cumberland Heights. It's a brand new campus. It's about, as the crow flies, maybe 7 miles from Cumberland Heights campus. It is at full equine therapy. It's designed for boys, adolescent male, and it is go online, check it out, googlearch.org. You will find it. Beautiful pictures. My place that's closest to my heart, it's a place that I went, which is owned and operated by Cumberland Heights. It's called Stillwaters. We have a men's and women's campus. Stillwaters is 12-step immersion. So it's for knuckleheads like me that couldn't get it the first time or the second time. And it offers long-term care at a very, very reasonable price. But online, you can see everything. We've got some pretty exciting stuff going on, which I could talk about for a long time, but I won't bore you with that. You can hit me up on Facebook or through Kevin if you have any more questions or anything like that.
Cool. And we'll put all your contact information up here too, and we'll put it on the Facebook page in the group. And you know what, we also, hey, do a little bit of a sales pitch. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, the community education that you guys do.
Yes. So this is a COVID thing, very much like my hair. We had to move everything virtual. And one of the things we moved virtual was community education. So if you go to the cumberlandheights.org website, there's a little banner up there for events. And these are most of the time free. There's some of them that are like $10 just to get you some vested interest. And we have wonderful people like Kevin Peterson come on there and do an education for our families and for patients. that have left us, alumni, stuff like that.
Awesome.
That's when those will go back to being in person eventually, and we will host those at different locations. The beautiful thing about COVID is that we all were forced to go virtual. I hadn't done a Zoom meeting in my life until COVID happened. Now I do 700 of them a day. So
yeah, exactly. Well, and I had a great experience doing the education with you guys.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. Hey,
and if you haven't read the book Chronic Hope, check it out, because I tell people, and I'm going to plug. There it is. Oh, look at that, right on cue. That wasn't even planned. Kevin, you guys are good. I will tell you this. I wish that book was available to me and my family when I was 18, 17, 19 years old, right in that range. Because it is, and not only that, man, that's a pretty revealing insight to you and your life, man. That took a lot of courage to put that out there, but it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And appreciate you writing that.
Hey man, thanks a lot. And I appreciate you saying that. And I mean, I think one of the things that you and I share is the openness, the authenticity, the genuineness, the transparency, because that's the only way for us to operate,
Right.
and that's why, we do this. It's free. We have the podcast. It's free. We have the YouTube channel. It's free. The books are $10. The video course is $37. We do not want to make this. It's not a $20,000 commitment to help your family member.
Right.
It's,
right.
Here's all the information. Go get them. And
that's right.
And let us help you. And ask us any questions, and we'll be happy to answer them and point you in the right direction. And because it's more important to us that you get help than it is that I make money or you make money. And,
right.
So, hey man, I'm so grateful for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor and a privilege. And I can't wait to come up and see you up in your neck of the woods here at least in the next 30 days. I'll be up there to see you. And thanks for all those people that chimed in, and my family and all that stuff. That's pretty.
Yeah, your entourage. I mean, I'm impressed. That's the most. That's really cool. Hey, we'll be back I think we'll be back in 2 weeks doing another Chronic Hope podcast. And thanks for joining us. And I never know how to say goodbye because I just don't want it to end. But thanks, man. I love you. You're the greatest.
Thank you. Be well.
Okay, bro. All right. Bye, everybody.